Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're looking at a day in the market that, honestly, made absolutely no sense. We saw a plunge on the back of some really terrible economic news, followed by this massive monster rally that erased all the losses, and then some. So, was any of it real?
Okay, let's dive right in with this quote because it just nails it. The big picture today is this feeling of extreme tension. On one side, you've got this illusion, this mirage of a market rally. But on the other, you have the powerful, real-world gravitational pull of a struggling economy. And right now, the market is caught right in the middle, teetering on a very, very dangerous edge.
So, we have to ask ourselves what really happened today? I mean, was this incredible V-shaped comeback a sign of some kind of hidden strength, proof of resilience? Or was it just a fragile illusion, a warning sign of just how unstable everything has really become?
To figure that out, we first need to pull back the curtain on that unbelievable rebound. You had major indices like the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq down well over 1.5%, only to roar back and finish way up in the green. But you know what? It wasn't what it looked like. The entire turnaround, and this is the crazy part, it wasn't based on any sudden good news about the economy. Not at all. It was a purely mechanical chain reaction, kicked off by a single comment in a TV interview. So you see the steps. The market tanks, a politician says something, and that triggers this technical cascade that had absolutely nothing to do with fundamentals. And this right here, this explains the real engine behind the rally. It wasn't some new wave of optimistic buyers flooding in. It was a panic. You had investors who had bet against the market, who were suddenly forced to buy back stocks to stop the bleeding and avoid massive losses. That created this powerful surge in prices that was, well, completely artificial. And if you look under the hood, you see the rally wasn't broad at all. Actually, it was the exact opposite. Money was fleeing from sectors that are sensitive to the real economy and just crowding into a handful of AI fortress stocks. It seems like those are now being treated as the last safe place to hide. This isn't a sign of a healthy market. It's a sign of a very nervous, concentrated bet. Okay, so that was the shiny, V-shaped mirage. Now let's look behind it, at the real economy. Because under the surface, the engine is flashing some of the most serious warning signs we've seen in decades. So here it is, the absolutely toxic combination. On one hand, you get a jobs report that was a total shocker. The economy was supposed to add 55,000 jobs. Instead, it lost 92,000. I mean, that's not just a miss, that's a complete U-turn. At the same time, oil prices were spiking, threatening to send inflation soaring again. Slower growth and higher prices, that, my friends, is the perfect recipe for stagflation. And this is the absolute nightmare scenario for any central bank, especially the Federal Reserve. Why? Well, because the main tool you have to fight inflation, raising interest rates, makes a recession and unemployment worse, and the tools you use to fight a recession, like cutting rates, just make inflation explode. They are completely and utterly trapped. And this new reality is forcing the big banks to just throw out their old playbooks. You know, just a few weeks ago, all anyone could talk about was when the Fed would start cutting rates. Now, you have major players like JP Morgan warning that those cuts might be off the table entirely. And get this, that the Fed could be forced into a shocking rate hike to fight this new wave of inflation. And believe it or not, it gets even worse. Beyond the economic data we see every day, there are even deeper, more structural problems developing in the very plumbing of the financial system itself. Now, this might sound a little technical, but stick with me because this is critical. The bond market is flashing a huge warning sign called a bear steepening. Basically, it's when long-term interest rates rise faster than short-term ones, and it's often a signal that investors are bracing for economic trouble and higher inflation down the road. And a rapid rise like this puts extreme stress on the entire system, especially the banks. So what's this number? $332 million. Now, that might not sound like a lot in a world of trillions, but its significance is huge. This is the critically low balance of the Fed's reverse repo facility. You can think of that as the financial system's emergency cash reservoir. And as you can see, that reservoir is now, for all intents and purposes, empty. And this chart really lays the problem out clearly. Look, at the exact same time that the emergency fund, the RRP, is running dry, the U.S. Treasury is pulling over $1 trillion out of the private banking system. So the emergency tank is empty just as the main tank is being drained. It's creating a very, very dangerous liquidity cliff. Okay, so
With the market's fragile illusion clashing head-on with a pretty grim economic reality, where on earth do we go from here? Well, the analysis lays out two starkly different scenarios for what could possibly come next. The path forward seems to depend almost entirely on geopolitics and the price of oil. In scenario A, the golden one, tensions ease up, oil starts flowing freely, and the market just breathes this huge sigh of relief. But in scenario B, the conflict drags on, oil prices stay painfully high, and crucial market support levels start to break. That could trigger a wave of forced algorithmic selling and a true bear market. And there's one more risk out there. A true black swan event that's being completely underestimated right now. What if this situation moves beyond a temporary blockade to the actual physical destruction of key energy and water infrastructure in the Gulf? That wouldn't be a temporary price spike. That would be a permanent supply catastrophe, an oil shock that could make the 1970s look tame. So the final verdict here is one of extreme caution. Today's rally wasn't a sign of health. It was a mirage, an illusion created by algorithms dancing to the tune of a single political comment. The foundation underneath it all is incredibly fragile. So the real question is, how long can the dance last before that thin sheet of ice finally cracks?